Before the first coin flip, before the first kickoff, you just gotta check out the Sideline Sizzle with the youngest sports commentator in American radio. Here's Tristan Blackman with the Sideline Sizzle.
Welcome to another edition of the Sideline Sizzle, brought to you by the City of Conway Parks and Recreation Department and the Biddle Law Firm. We have a little bit of NFL news to cover, as well as our continued look at each NFL division schedule for 2023. Last week we looked at the NFC West. This week we'll look at the AFC West. Now we will get to that in a moment, but first I'd like to touch on news that came out regarding former Cardinals wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. Now several weeks ago, DeAndre Hopkins was cut from the Arizona Cardinals. I never recall seeing a direct reason for why he was released. The Cardinals probably couldn't find a worthy enough trade partner and just ended up letting Hopkins make the choice for himself on where he wants to play next. Hopkins actually did pretty well last season in Arizona, even after he was suspended for multiple games to start the season and didn't have consistent quarterback play seemingly all year. The Cardinals are not in a position to win at all, and Hopkins saw that last season. He knows he's getting older and wants to get a much-deserved Super Bowl ring before it's all said and done. Now, once he was released, many speculated that he would sign with a competitive team. Considering teams like the Chiefs and Bills did not have the cap room to bring him in, Hopkins would need to turn to other teams on the brink of a playoff berth, but not quite there yet. Had the Ravens not signed Odell Beckham, they would probably have made a move for him, especially since there were already trade discussions with the Cardinals and Ravens throughout the year. In the end, Hopkins was speculated to be in heavy contact with the New England Patriots, who could really use a true wide receiver one other than Juju Smith-Schuster. However, as of Monday, it was announced that DeAndre Hopkins has signed with the Tennessee Titans. That was another team that was rumored to be all in on DeAndre Hopkins, but it was clear Hopkins' priority was winning a Super Bowl, right? Are the Titans really poised to make a run at the Super Bowl? Who do they have offensively other than Derrick Henry? Ryan Tannehill? Tannehill is starting to get older, and he hasn't had a good season since he was initially named the starter in Tennessee. Maybe Will Levis can claim the starting job and make an impact, but even if he does, the Titans' offensive line has taken some big hits, and when Derrick Henry isn't healthy, they have zero offense. At least their defense is good, but are they really Super Bowl worthy? I don't think so. In fact, other than the coaching, I don't think there's anything that screams Super Bowl contender about this Titans team. So I'm really at a loss for words. I don't know what Hopkins is thinking with this move. The Titans aren't even a team on the come-up. They're actually quite the opposite. They've been declining each and every season. They aren't even the best team in their division anymore, and that's saying something because 2 out of the first 4 draft picks initially belonged to AFC South teams, which is the division that the Titans are in. So with all this in mind, will DeAndre Hopkins make an impact on this team, and will he help them get to a Super Bowl? To me, this is just another version of the Arizona Cardinals. Good pieces in place, but not enough to push them over the edge, and the clock is ticking. The window for this team has been shut, and I don't see the Titans as a playoff contender anymore, let alone a Super Bowl. Unless Will Levis is the next Aaron Rodgers, I'd say DeAndre Hopkins has made a mistake. The Tennessee Titans, where great receivers go to die. We saw it with Julio Jones just a few years ago. Will we see it with DeAndre Hopkins too? Only time will tell. Moving on, we will now take a look at each AFC West team and my prediction for how they'll do this coming season. We'll look at their schedule and break down each game, starting with none other than the Denver Broncos. The Broncos had a very anticlimactic season last year. All that hype was built up for Denver just to go 5-11. Being a Broncos fan, it crushed my soul, and it'll be hard getting excited about this team like that again. Every time I get my hopes up, they just disappoint me, and I'm left with a bad taste in my mouth. So, this coming season, I'm going to be a little more realistic about things. The biggest problem for Denver, just like every season, is our quarterback dilemma. Denver made a massive trade for Russell Wilson, just for the guy to totally fall off a cliff last year. Sometimes it still doesn't seem real to me. I don't know how he managed to play that bad with or without Nathaniel Hackett in charge. That was another primary cause for our failures last season was the coaching staff, primarily our head coach. Nathaniel Hackett might be one of the worst coaches I've ever seen. It was awful. A so-called offensive mastermind took control of Denver and made an already suffering offense even worse than it was. I don't even know how that's possible. It takes a certain level of skill to make an offense as bad as the Denver Broncos that bad. And I can confidently say he made the offense considerably worse as a coach because I watched nearly every game. I gave up entirely after we lost that game to the Rams on Christmas Day. You know, that one that aired on Nickelodeon with Patrick from SpongeBob making fun of the team. The game where Los Angeles, an equally bad team to the Broncos, dropped 50-plus points on us. Yeah, I remember that game. Some Christmas gift that was. Anyway, hopefully this season with Sean Payton, things can be turned around. The defense should be around the same level, and our offense hopefully takes a massive step up. I'm looking at Russell Wilson in particular this season, as are the rest of Denver fans. If Russ can improve from last year, I think the season goes well for us. Assuming he can't, then Denver won't come close to a winning record. Luckily for Russ, being at the bottom of quarterback play in the NFL means that the only way to go is up, so he's bound for at least some improvement. I'm also looking for guys like Jerry Jeudy to break out. He should have an 1,000-yard-plus season this year. Now, let's actually dive into the schedule. Week 1 is a classic matchup between the Broncos and Raiders. I do not like the Las Vegas Raiders, and quite frankly, I'm doubtful they perform very well this coming season. The Raiders will especially struggle to open the season. I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding this team. Plus, they've got Josh McDaniels running the show still. As long as he's calling the plays, I doubt the Raiders will be on top of their game. Give me the Broncos here with a solid start and a win. In Week 2, the Broncos move on to face Washington, and this is another team that has bits and pieces of talent, but a lot of uncertainty. We don't know how Sam Howell will do at quarterback, and there are just aspects of this team I'm not fond of. The Broncos should pick up another win here, which is no surprise. We usually start the season off strong. Week 3 is a tough one. Denver will be on the road here in Miami, which is always tough at the beginning of the year. The heat in Miami is just so oppressive for visiting teams, and with a talented offense and a defense that's really coming together, Miami is a good team. I have Denver picking up a loss in this game during Week 3. Week 4 is a bit of a rebound game for Denver, though. We play the Chicago Bears and should get a win there. I have faith in Justin Fields, but just not the rest of the team quite yet. In Week 5, Denver will be faced with another challenge in the New York Jets. I think this will be a much closer game than a lot of media outlets are willing to admit. This Jets team is very talented, but I think Denver can match up pretty well against them and really be tough to take down. Not to mention it's a home game, and the Broncos crowd will be pumped to try and defeat Nathaniel Hackett after all he did to us poor fans. I am giving Denver a loss here, but don't be surprised if the Broncos make it a close game. Week 6 is a game against the Kansas City Chiefs on the road in Kansas City. These games, they never go well. The Chiefs have a massive winning streak against us, and they'll keep it going with this game. Give Denver another loss. Week 7, the Broncos will face the Green Bay Packers, and look, I'm not opposed to Jordan Love, I just have my doubts. Denver is a tough defensive unit, and Jordan Love will likely have his fair share of struggles in this game. I think the Broncos have a competitive edge here, and will grab a win here at home against the Packers. Then we move on to Week 8, where we play the Chiefs yet again, this time at home. I actually like this schedule because they sort of just get the Chiefs games out of the way before Denver gets too far into the season. We're bound to lose at least once to the Chiefs this year, so might as well get it over with. Here though, Denver is at home and is looking good with a winning record. I've seen a lot of predictions where Denver actually beats the Chiefs this season, but look, I'm not a fool. I meant it when I said my hopes were let down last year, and I'm not going to hype Denver up like we're ready to beat this team. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm definitely not going to say that it will happen, so I have Denver getting swept by Kansas City yet again this season and losing here in Week 8. Then Denver moves into the bye week and gets a chance to rest up before a challenging game against the Bills. Considering Denver will have a bye week, I think they could surprise a lot of people and beat the Bills. However, I do have the Broncos losing here because obviously Buffalo is a contender that is very capable of beating the Broncos this season. Another loss here in Week 10. Denver will face the Vikings in Week 11. Most of the schedule predictions I've seen will have Denver winning this game, but I actually have them losing here. I think they are more than capable of winning, but I'm just a bit uncertain of whether or not Denver will actually pull it off. The Broncos could match up well against the Vikings, especially defensively, so this might actually be a win after all, but I just feel like Denver's going to lose this game. This is the point where the Broncos turn their season around. Based on my prediction, the Broncos would be 4-6 to this point in the season. Not great, but Denver's schedule actually lightens up a bit, and I think they make the most of things here. Week 12 is a home game against the Browns. I think Denver wins that one. Then they face the Texans in Week 13, another win for the Broncos here. Week 14 is a road game against the Chargers, and here, Denver might be tripped up a bit, so give them a loss. But in Week 15, the Broncos fight back and get a huge win against the Lions on the road. I say huge win because the Lions should be atop the NFC North this year, and are already looking very good. A win against them would be very nice. Then we move on to Week 16, which is a tougher game against the Patriots, and I think Denver loses this one. New England has a great defense and an offense that will hopefully improve this season. They're just in a tough division and will suffer because of it. However, I do think the Broncos will lose to this team, even though it could be a close game. Then to close things out, Denver will really need to push to this point in the season. No room for error here, and honestly, a playoff spot would be doubtful. However, a home game here for Denver against a tough Chargers team. Give me the Broncos in this one. Then to close it out in Week 18, Denver faces the Raiders and should get a win here to wrap up the season. Yes, I have them sweeping the Raiders this season, and I'm confident in that. So, with that, Denver would finish with a record of 9-8. Finally, with a winning season for the first time since Peyton Manning retired. Well, to be fair, Denver went 9-7 their first season without him, but it's been nothing downhill since then. I think the Broncos have it in them to win this year. Last year was just bad coaching, bad quarterback play, a combination of things. This season could be different, and I can see Denver pushing for a winning season. I think their floor is around 6 or 7 wins, and their ceiling could be as high as 11 wins, probably closer to 10 wins, honestly. I hope Russell Wilson can improve this season and really bounce back from the train wreck that was last season. If he doesn't improve, well, just know that my mental state is in jeopardy for 2023. You've been listening to the Sideline Sizzle, brought to you by the City of Conway Parks and Recreation Department and the Biddle Law Firm. The AFC West is a fairly talented division, mostly because the team we'll look at next is sitting at the top of it in the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll dive into their schedule as well as the Raiders and Chargers schedules coming up next right here on the Sideline Sizzle.
We're talking football. You got a problem with that? This is the Sideline Sizzle.
Welcome back to the Sideline Sizzle, brought to you by the City of Conway Parks and Recreation Department and the Biddle Law Firm. We've been covering each NFL team's schedule and how I think they will do in 2023. Today we're covering the AFC West, and last segment we started out with the Denver Broncos schedule. Now we will dive into the Kansas City Chiefs schedule. It should be no surprise to anyone that I have the Chiefs with a winning record this season. They've been dominant year after year, even if they may or may not have won a Super Bowl consistently each season. I'm honestly glad that they've lost a few playoff games here and there because, as a Broncos fan, it just gets exhausting seeing them do so well for so long. Patrick Mahomes is undoubtedly, in my opinion, the best player in the NFL right now. If he continues to win more Super Bowls, there could be a similar debate that we have with basketball in Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Which player is the greatest of all time, Brady or Mahomes? Clearly, the answer is Brady for now. All I'll say is that as a Broncos fan, I am much more afraid of Mahomes at QB than I have ever been about Brady. But for the record, yes, Tom Brady is the greatest to ever do it in football. Oh, and Michael Jordan is the greatest in basketball. Just thought I'd clear the air and mention that as well. Don't get mad, it's just the truth. Anyway, the Chiefs are bound for a good season this year, and I'm confident that my prediction reflects that. So in Week 1, the Chiefs will play a tricky opponent in the Detroit Lions. While I think the Detroit Lions will be a better team this year and certainly a little more consistent, I doubt they take the Chiefs down early here. In Week 2, give me the Chiefs with another win as they play the Jaguars on the road in Week 2. Look, I believe in the Jaguars this season, but they're in a similar boat as the Lions where they're on the come up. They're good, but not quite that good to go toe for toe with the Chiefs. I think this will be one of Kansas City's closer games on the season though, and Jacksonville could impress me here. Week 3 is a matchup against the Bears. Give me the Chiefs here with an easy win. In Week 4, this game could be pretty good as they play the New York Jets. The Jets are giving Rodgers a lot more talent to work with, I feel, than he had at the Packers, and the Chiefs' defense could get stunned in this one. Patrick Mahomes will probably have to pull off some magic in this game, but it doesn't discourage me from having them winning here. I think the Jets will be capable of beating Kansas City this season. I'm just uncertain that in Week 4, they'll actually pull it off. Maybe closer to the end of the season when this team finds their groove, I'd give the Jets better odds, but here I'm sticking with the Chiefs. Week 5, Kansas City faces the Minnesota Vikings, and I have the Chiefs winning this one. The Vikings simply lost too much talent this offseason, and even if they hadn't, I think the Chiefs still outmatch them. Week 6, a game against the Broncos, and I talked about this last segment. The win streak will not be broken. I can hope all I want, but the more that I deceive myself and gamble on Denver winning here, the less likely I feel that it will actually happen. The Chiefs will sweep Denver this year. Week 7, the Chiefs play the Chargers, and I think these two teams will end up splitting their 2-game series this season. Here I have the Chiefs winning, simply because they're at home, but they very, could lose here. Week 8, second game against the Broncos, give the Chiefs a win. Then in Week 9, the Chiefs will face the Dolphins. Honestly, give me the Dolphins here. I think Tua, assuming he's healthy, will step up and deliver a big-time game for this team. Mahomes will be defeated here, and Tyreek Hill will get his revenge in this game. I just feel it. I just seriously doubt the Chiefs secondary can bottle up such a talented receiving core. The Chiefs will then transition to the bye week in Week 10 before facing the Eagles in Week 11. With that extra week of preparation and hunger to get things back on track, give me the Chiefs in this Super Bowl rematch game. I think the Eagles are very talented and probably more talented than this Chiefs team in all honesty. However, Patrick Mahomes with an extra week of preparation and rest is just scary. I think it will be a close game, and I'm not saying this isn't a toss-up game either. It's definitely two very talented teams here. However, I do think the Chiefs, like they usually do, will find a way to win, even though on paper they're a little outmatched. The Chiefs will then move on to play the Raiders in Week 12 after a big win. Should be an easy game for them considering how much talent Las Vegas lost, and also considering Josh McDaniels is still in charge. Then they'll pick up another win in Week 13 against the Packers, who I'm quite doubtful of this season. Week 4 is another challenge for Kansas City as they face their more recent rival in the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills will definitely have a chance, but I have the Chiefs winning. Just like I predicted in the Eagles game, the Bills are a very talented team, but I'm not betting against the Chiefs here, especially since it is a home game for them. Week 15 is a matchup versus the Patriots, and I have the Chiefs winning. Even if the Chiefs struggle against this Patriots defense, I'm a bit uncertain New England has what it takes to win here. Week 16 is a rematch against the Raiders, and I have the Chiefs winning again to sweep Las Vegas this year. Then, Week 17 and 18 are a little tough. In Week 17, it's a classic between the Chiefs and Bengals, who somehow keep getting matched against each other in the regular season. Here I have the Bengals winning. I think Cincinnati has what it takes, even though they lost to this team in the playoffs this past year. Joe Burrow will probably be at the top of his game, fired up for the postseason, and honestly looking to snatch the number 1 seed from the Chiefs here if it's available. I think he wins it in Week 17. Then moving on to Week 18. It is a road game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Not that the environment in Los Angeles will be tough for the Chiefs. Their home field advantage is certainly lacking. However, the Chargers will be a solid team at the very least, and a team that will cause problems for the Chiefs. Like I said earlier, I think the Chiefs and Chargers split the series, so here in Week 18, maybe the Chiefs are resting some starters up to this point or something. I can see Los Angeles winning this game here to close out the season. And with that, Kansas City would be finishing with a very nice record of 14 wins and just 3 losses. I think they have the potential to maybe win another game, but I'd say 14 to 15 wins is about their ceiling. I was definitely generous with this team, and I won't be shocked if they choke an easy game against the Raiders or another poor team. But yeah, 14 wins is not bad at all. I'm sure Chiefs fans will be pleased with that prediction. Patrick Mahomes, he's dominant, and I expect him to have a great season with his team in 2023. Moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders, this team has some issues, primarily with their head coach, Josh McDaniels. I certainly don't like him. He's far better off just being a coordinator, but no, the Raiders have kept him as their head coach. With Derek Carr and Darren Waller gone, and 2 superstars who don't even want to play for you anymore, I think the Raiders are done. Offensively, they're terrible, and their defense hasn't been good in years, maybe even decades at this point. You know it's bad when the brightest spot on your roster is the special teams unit, which, aside from Daniel Carlson, is mediocre at best. Just be honest with yourselves, Raiders fans. How well do you think this team could possibly do this season? Be ready because I doubt they do well at all, and this prediction may come off a little bit harsh. Week 1, they open up against the Denver Broncos on the road, and I'm going to love this game. Denver will start strong and take down the Raiders here in this game. Week 2, the Raiders face the Buffalo Bills, and that will be another loss for them. Week 3, they have their first home game coming up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and here I have them taking yet another loss. Mediocre offense versus a stellar defense just doesn't mix well for a team like Las Vegas. Week 4, they're on the road to take on the Chargers, give them another loss here. In Week 5, the Raiders will face the Green Bay Packers, and here I could see them winning. However, I have the Packers actually claiming this game. Week 6, the Raiders will play the Patriots. Should be another loss for them there. In Week 7, they finally pick up a win as they play the Chicago Bears. It wouldn't shock me if they lose this game, but I think they have a good shot at winning here. Week 8, they face the Detroit Lions, and with a team like Detroit, that will be another loss for the Raiders. Had it been the Lions from early last season, I'd say the Raiders win, but Detroit has leveled up since then, to say the least. Then in Week 9, they face Darren Waller and the Giants, the man whom they traded away for next to nothing. I've got the Giants winning here, and Darren Waller will claim his revenge, I guess. Week 10, they face the Jets, which translates to another loss. Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams facing each other, former teammates, an iconic duo now battling one another. Maybe Davante gets extra motivated and balls out. I don't know. With Sauce Gardner defending him, I'm not so sure of that. In Week 11, the Raiders play the Dolphins, which is going to be another uphill battle for the Raiders, and one I do not have them winning. Then in Week 12, they face the Chiefs, which should be a loss for Las Vegas unless Kansas City just has a bad game. Alright, Week 13, it's the bye week. The Raiders clearly eliminated from playoff contention and off to one of the worst starts you can really have to a season. In all fairness though, they do not have an easy schedule whatsoever, but the back end of their schedule is a bit more endurable for them. So, after the bye week in Week 14, they get a chance to catch their breaths and move on to face the Vikings. I think Minnesota struggles to win this game. I can just see the Raiders gathering together and getting a win here. Defensively, the Vikings and Raiders share some weaknesses, and I don't think the Raiders will totally lose out to close the season. Maybe McDaniels gets fired before the season ends. I'm not sure what could go down in Vegas. I do think they will win this game though. Then, riding that wave of momentum, they'll take on the Chargers at home in Vegas. I think the Chargers split with the Raiders at this point, and I have Vegas getting a win against them here. Week 16 is a rematch with the Chiefs, and I doubt the Raiders win here, especially since it's taking place in Kansas City for this one. But in Week 17, they face the Colts, who somehow beat them last year, but this year, I think Las Vegas wins. Then to close things out in Week 18, I do have the Raiders closing out the season with a loss to my Denver Broncos. Denver has a lot more to lose at this point in the season than Vegas will have, so I think a motivated Broncos team will take care of business on the road. And with that, the Raiders would close things out with a less than ideal finish, ending up with a final record of 4 wins and 13 losses. It seems harsh, but they've lost a considerable amount of talent without really gaining any excess depth through free agency. They did do well in the draft, but these rookies they're rookies. You can't expect them to nail every play consistently just their first year. So I think with Josh McDaniels in charge and a roster that has a lot of holes, that this Raiders team will fall apart in 2023. Moving on to our final team, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are an interesting unit for sure. They have a lot of talent. I mean, on paper they look incredible, and being able to retain Austin Eckler will be good for them. Justin Herbert is still performing at a high level. The only problem with this team is injury concerns. I don't think I've seen a team fall apart so consistently quite like the Los Angeles Chargers. They're always seemingly bogged down with injuries to the point where they just aren't a top competitor. I think 2023 has a lot in store for the Chargers, but they need to be more consistent. With injuries as well as just poor play, they've choked a lot of very winnable games in recent past. They cannot do that and expect to play highly in the AFC. Already in a somewhat competitive division, the Chargers need to stay on their toes, and my prediction is banking on them minimizing injuries as best as they can. So, Week 1, I have the Chargers starting strong and winning their opening game against the Miami Dolphins. Early on, there's simply less injury concerns for me, and I think the Chargers start off well. Week 2, they face the Titans with the newly acquired DeAndre Hopkins, and honestly, it doesn't change anything for me. Chargers will win this game. Week 3, they face the Minnesota Vikings, and honestly, the Vikings are considerably outmatched in this game. Should be a win for the Chargers. Week 4 is the Chargers' first of 2 games against the Raiders, this first one being a home game. I think the Chargers win pretty easily here in Week 4, should be able to lock down the Raiders. Chargers get an early bye week in Week 5, which may hurt them a little bit if injuries start to rack up later in the season. You always want that mid to late season bye week if you're nursing injuries, so here in Week 5, that's a bit tough. After the bye, the Chargers face the Cowboys in Week 6. I like this game. This should be an interesting one to watch, but I do believe the Chargers will win here. The Cowboys will certainly put up a fight, no doubt about that, but I believe the Chargers will actually be the ones to win it. On the other hand, though, I really could see where Dallas may win this game. Week 7 is a road game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think the Chargers lose here. However, I do have them splitting with the Chiefs, as I mentioned when we covered them earlier. Week 8, the Chargers face the Bears, and I have them winning this game. Then in Week 9, they take on the Jets on the road in New York. This one is a bit tricky. I think the Jets will have found their footing and established a rhythm to this point in the season. Honestly, I think they have the advantage in this game somewhat, and I have them taking down the Chargers here. Week 10 is a matchup versus the Lions, which could be a tight game, but I do have Los Angeles winning this one. Then in Week 11, the Chargers face yet another NFC North opponent in the Green Bay Packers. This should be a win for them unless the Chargers find a way to choke this one. Week 12 is a matchup against the Ravens, and here I have Los Angeles losing. I think they just get shut down by Baltimore defensively in this game, and if Lamar is healthy, then things could get ugly. Week 13, they play the Patriots, and I have them winning here. Then in Week 14, I have them taking down the Broncos at home. After this game, I've got LA sort of falling apart at the back end of the season. They then move on to face the Raiders in Week 15, who I have them losing to. I just have a feeling the Chargers will split with Vegas this season. In Week 16, they face the Bills, which should be a tough opponent for the Chargers and one that I have them falling to here. I expect Josh Allen to really have a good game here as the postseason gets closer and closer. Then the losses keep piling up as my Broncos get a big win over the Chargers here and LA takes yet another loss. They do, however, finish strong as I have them closing the season out with a win against none other than the Kansas City Chiefs. So with that, the Chargers will be finishing with a record of 11 wins and 6 losses. I know it's only a bit of an improvement from last season, but I wasn't extremely generous with their prediction purely because of injury. I've always been doubtful of the Chargers and the hype that gets built around them. This season is their chance to actually prove they can make it past a wildcard game, which they haven't done for quite some time. I think if they play consistently and try their best to stay healthy, then this team could win as many as 13 or 14 games. However, I see them more around what they did last season with about 10 to 12 wins. I know this team can be dangerous though, but I can't reiterate this enough. Their biggest concern for 2023 is staying healthy and avoiding injuries. Only then will this team rise to the occasion. And with that, we have covered every team in the AFC West game by game. The final standings for the AFC West, based on my prediction, would put the Chiefs in first place, followed by the Chargers, Broncos, and then the Raiders coming in last place. This division should be a tad more competitive this year, I'd say, hopefully with the Broncos improving from last season. That's all we've got for today's show, though. We appreciate you tuning in. Next week, we will look at the NFC South and their schedule, as well as any news and NFL updates that come through. You've been listening to the Sideline Sizzle, brought to you by the City of Conway Parks and Recreation Department and the Biddle Law Firm. We will catch you next week.